There is a particular kind of loneliness that only those who have awakened can understand. You open your eyes one morning and the world looks exactly the same. The same streets, the same faces, the same conversations. But something inside you has shifted so profoundly that you can no longer pretend to belong. You see through the masks people wear. You feel the hollow echo beneath their laughter. You notice the silent desperation hiding behind their busyness, their accomplishments, their carefully curated lives. And the strangest part? No one else seems to see what you see. No one else seems to feel what you feel. You try to share what you've discovered, but your words land like stones in water, disappearing without a trace. People look at you with confusion, with concern, sometimes with quiet hostility. They tell you you're overthinking. They tell you to relax, to stop being so serious, to just enjoy life. But you can't unsee what you've seen. You can't unknow what you know. And slowly, terribly, you realize that your awakening has not freed you. It has isolated you. The world that once felt like home now feels like a stage full of actors who've forgotten they're performing. And you, the only one who remembers the script, is fiction, stand alone in the wings, unable to rejoin the play. If this is your experience, if you feel exiled from a world that once welcomed you, then what I'm about to share may be the only thing that makes sense of your suffering. You are not crazy. You are not broken. You are not too sensitive, or too negative, or too complicated. What you are experiencing is something Dostoevsky understood better than almost any writer who ever lived. The agony of consciousness in an unconscious world. The unbearable weight of seeing truth in a culture built on comfortable lies. The exile that follows genuine awakening. In his novels, Dostoevsky returned again and again to a particular type of character. The one who wakes up. The one who sees too clearly. The one who cannot go back to sleep, no matter how much easier that would be. Raskolnikov in Crime and Punishment. The underground man in Notes from Underground. Prince Mishkin in The Idiot. Ivan Karamazov in The Brothers Karamazov. These are not simply fictional creations. They are portraits of a specific psychological and spiritual condition. The condition of the awakened individual trapped among the sleeping. And what Dostoevsky revealed through these characters is both devastating and strangely comforting. Your suffering is not personal failure. It is the inevitable consequence of consciousness emerging in a world that has not yet caught up. Dostoevsky knew that awakening does not happen gently. It ruptures. It tears through the fabric of your previous life, like lightning through a dark sky. One moment, you're moving through the world with the same assumptions everyone else holds. The next moment, those assumptions collapse. You see that most of what people call success is just elaborate distraction. You see that most of what passes for happiness is just relief from self-created suffering. You see that the social structures everyone takes for granted are built on foundations of fear, conformity, and unexamined belief. And this seeing is not intellectual. It is visceral. It lives in your body, in your gut, in the tightness of your chest, when you sit in rooms full of people speaking words that mean nothing. This is what happened to Raskolnikov. Not the murder itself, but what preceded it. He woke up to the arbitrariness of moral law, to the constructed nature of social order, to the fact that all the rules people follow are simply agreements, not truths. And that awakening drove him to the edge of madness, not because he was weak, but because consciousness without integration is torture. He could not go back to believing what everyone around him believed, but he had not yet found a way to live with what he now knew. He was trapped between two worlds, too awake to fit in, not yet evolved enough to transcend the need to fit in. This is the trap you are in now. What Dostoevsky understood, what he showed through character after character, is that the world does not celebrate awakening. It punishes it. Because your awakening threatens the collective illusion. When you stop playing along, when you stop pretending, when you stop participating in the shared performance of normalcy, you become a mirror, and people do not want to look in mirrors. They want to stay comfortable in their sleep. They want to believe that their lives have meaning, that their choices matter, that they are good people doing good things. Your presence, your questions, your inability to fake enthusiasm for things that no longer move you, all of this reflects back to them the possibility that they too are living inside a dream, and that possibility terrifies them. So they do what humans have always done with mirrors that show unwanted reflections. They attack them, they reject them, they exile them. This is not cruelty, this is self-protection. The sleeping world must defend itself against the awakened individual or risk waking up, and most people would rather die than wake up. Dostoevsky saw this dynamic play out in every social structure he examined. In families, where the one who questions is labeled the problem. In religious institutions, where the mystic is treated as heretic. In political systems, where the revolutionary is imprisoned. In friendships, where the one who grows is left behind. The pattern is always the same. Awakening leads to isolation, not because you want to be alone, but because the world cannot tolerate your presence. Prince Mishkin in The Idiot is perhaps Dostoevsky's most heartbreaking exploration of this truth. Mishkin is a man of pure consciousness, pure compassion, pure seeing. He looks at people and sees their suffering, their beauty, their potential. He speaks truth without malice. He loves without agenda. He is, in every sense, awake, and the world destroys him, not through violence, though there is that too, but through incomprehension. No one understands him. No one can receive what he offers. His goodness is mistaken for stupidity. His clarity is mistaken for naivety. His love is mistaken for weakness. And slowly, inevitably, his contact with a sleeping world drives him back into the very illness he had recovered from. He becomes an idiot again, not because he was never truly healed, but because consciousness cannot survive prolonged exposure to unconsciousness without protection. And Mishkin had no protection. He had no walls, no defenses, no ability to hide his awakened state. So the world broke him. Dostoevsky wrote The Idiot as a meditation on what happens to a truly good person, a truly conscious person, in a world that is fundamentally asleep, and his conclusion was devastating. Such a person cannot survive, not because they are weak, but because the world is not ready for them. This is what you're feeling now, the weight of being awake in a sleeping world, the exhaustion of seeing what others refuse to see, the loneliness of speaking a language no one else understands. You try to connect with people the way you used to, but every conversation feels hollow. They talk about trivial things with great seriousness. They worry about problems that seem absurd to you now. They chase goals that you can see will never satisfy them, and you want to shake them awake. You want to say, "Don't you see? Don't you understand? This is all a game. This is all a distraction. You're sleepwalking through your one precious life." But you can't say that, because the moment you do, you become the problem. You become the negative one, the difficult one, the one who can't just relax and enjoy things. And so you learn to stay quiet. You learn to smile and nod. You learn to play along just enough to not be completely exiled. But inside, the gap between who you are and who you pretend to be grows wider every day. And that gap is where the real suffering lives. Dostoevsky knew that this suffering has layers. The first layer is the loneliness, the ache of having no one who truly understands what you're experiencing. You can describe it, you can talk about it, but unless someone has been through it themselves, they simply cannot grasp it. They will offer advice that misses the point entirely. They will suggest solutions that don't address the real problem. They will tell you to see a therapist, to take medication, to think more positively, to practice gratitude. And all of this may be well intentioned, but it completely misunderstands what is happening. You are not depressed in the clinical sense. You are grieving. You are grieving the loss of your old life, your old self, your old world. You are mourning the death of innocence, and there is no therapy that can bring that back. The second layer is the alienation. You begin to feel like a stranger in your own life. The people you once felt close to now feel distant. The activities you once enjoyed now feel empty. The goals you once pursued now seem meaningless. You're surrounded by your old world, but you no longer belong to it. You're like someone who has traveled to a foreign country and returned home only to find that home is now foreign too. Everything looks familiar, but nothing feels right. You are in between, no longer who you were, not yet who you will become. And this in-between space is excruciating. The third layer is the hostility. This is the part that surprises people the most. You would think that awakening would be celebrated, that seeing clearly would be valued, that consciousness would be welcomed. But it is not. The more awake you become, the more threatening you are to those who remain asleep. And they respond to that threat with rejection, with judgment, with subtle and not so subtle forms of punishment. They exclude you from conversations. They stop inviting you to gatherings. They talk about you behind your back. They label you as negative, as intense, as too much. And the cruelest part? They do all of this while believing they are justified. Because from their perspective, you have changed. You are no longer the person they knew. You have become difficult to be around. You make them uncomfortable, and they have every right to protect themselves from discomfort. What they don't see, what they cannot see, is that their discomfort is not caused by you. It is caused by the reflection you provide. You are holding up a mirror to their own unlived life, their own unexamined beliefs, their own unconsciousness. And rather than look in the mirror, they shatter it. They reject you, and then they tell themselves, it's your fault. Dostoevsky explored this dynamic most deeply in the brothers Karamazov through the character of Ivan. Ivan is a brilliant intellectual who has awakened to the fundamental injustice and absurdity of existence. He sees the suffering of innocence, the silence of God, the meaninglessness of moral law, and his awakening fills him with rage, not because he is evil, but because he is honest. He cannot pretend that everything is fine when children suffer. He cannot believe in a God who allows such cruelty. He cannot accept the easy answers that comfort others, and this honesty isolates him completely. His father dismisses him as too philosophical. His brother Alyosha loves him but cannot reach him. The woman he desires sees him as cold and unfeeling. Everyone around Ivan interprets his awakening as a character flaw, as pride, as bitterness, as a refusal to accept life on life's terms. But Dostoevsky shows us that Ivan's problem is not too little humanity, it is too much. He feels the suffering of the world so deeply that he cannot bear it. He sees the truth so clearly that he cannot live with it, and the world, rather than acknowledging his insight, rather than sitting with him in that unbearable truth, condemns him for naming it. This is what happens to you. Your awakening, your seeing, your inability to pretend anymore. All of this is interpreted as personal failure, as something wrong with you, rather than something right. But here is what Dostoevsky also understood. Awakening is not the end. It is the beginning. Yes, it leads to isolation. Yes, it leads to suffering. Yes, it leads to exile from the sleeping world. But it also leads somewhere. It leads to a choice. You can reject your awakening and try to go back to sleep. Many people do this. They numb themselves with work, with substances, with entertainment, with constant motion. They bury their consciousness under layers of distraction, and sometimes they succeed in forgetting what they saw. They rejoin the sleeping world and spend the rest of their lives trying to convince themselves they made the right choice. Or you can accept your awakening and move forward, not back to sleep, but into a new way of being. This is the path Dostoevsky pointed toward through his characters who survived, through Alyosha, who remained conscious but learned to love the sleeping world anyway, through Sonia, who saw suffering clearly but chose compassion over bitterness, through the elder Zosima, who awakened fully and then devoted his life to helping others through their own dark nights. These characters show that awakening does not have to end in madness or exile. It can lead to a kind of transcendence, a way of being awake in a sleeping world without being destroyed by it. This transcendence requires something Dostoevsky called active love, not the sentimental love that pretends everything is fine, but the fierce, honest love that sees clearly and chooses connection anyway. It requires you to stop demanding that others wake up, to stop resenting them for their sleep, to stop trying to save them. Because the truth is, you cannot wake anyone who is not ready to wake. You cannot force consciousness on another person. All you can do is live your own awakening as fully and honestly as possible, and trust that your example, your presence, your way of being might plant seeds that bloom later in ways you will never see. This is not resignation. This is acceptance. It is the recognition that awakening is not a gift you give to others. It is a responsibility you carry for yourself. And carrying it means learning to live in two worlds at once: the sleeping world where most people dwell, and the awakened world where you now reside. You must learn to move between these worlds with grace, to speak the language of sleep when necessary without betraying your consciousness, to participate in the collective dream without getting lost in it, to maintain relationships with people who may never understand you, while also seeking out the rare few who might. This is the path of the awakened individual, and it is not easy. It requires constant vigilance, constant choice, constant recommitment to truth even when lies would be more comfortable. Dostoevsky also understood that part of this path involves facing your own shadow, because awakening reveals not just the sleep of the world, but the sleep that still exists within you, the ways you lie to yourself, the ways you avoid your own pain, the ways you project your inner darkness onto others. This is what Ivan Karamazov could not do. He saw the world's evil clearly, but he could not see his own. He condemned others for their unconsciousness while remaining blind to his own. And that blindness led to his breakdown. The truly awakened person must turn the same ruthless clarity they direct at the world back toward themselves. They must ask, what am I still refusing to see? What am I still pretending? Where am I still asleep? This self-examination is brutal because it means acknowledging that you are not as awake as you thought, that your awakening is incomplete, that you still carry shadows, still harbor illusions, still participate in the very systems you criticize. But this acknowledgement is also liberation because it means you are not separate from the sleeping world. You are part of it, and that shared humanity, that recognition that you too are flawed and incomplete and still learning, that is what allows connection to remain possible. So, what does Dostoevsky offer you now, in this moment of isolation and suffering? He offers you a framework for understanding what you're experiencing. He shows you that your exile is not random. It is the predictable consequence of consciousness in an unconscious world. He validates your pain while also challenging you to use it, to let it transform you rather than embitter you. He asks you to consider that perhaps the hatred you feel from the world is not personal. It is reflexive. It is the automatic response of sleep to waking. And while that response is real and painful, it does not have to define you. You can choose how you respond to it. You can choose bitterness and isolation, or you can choose what Dostoevsky called the way of love, the recognition that everyone, even those who reject you, even those who hate you, is suffering. They are suffering from their own sleep, their own unconsciousness, their own inability to wake, and they deserve compassion, not contempt. This does not mean you must remain in toxic relationships. It does not mean you must sacrifice yourself to people who cannot receive you, but it means you can leave without hatred. You can create distance without closing your heart. You can protect yourself without becoming like those you protect yourself from. The world will continue to hate you for your awakening, or at least it will continue to misunderstand you, to fear you, to push you away. That will not change. What can change is your relationship to that rejection. You can stop taking it personally. You can stop seeing it as evidence that something is wrong with you. You can start seeing it as the price of consciousness. And you can decide that price is worth paying, because the alternative, going back to sleep, is no longer an option. You have seen too much. You know too much. You cannot unknow what you know. And trying to do so will only create a different kind of suffering, a deeper, more corrosive suffering, the suffering of self-betrayal. Better to be exiled from the world while remaining true to yourself than to be welcomed by the world while betraying your own soul. Dostoevsky believed this absolutely. Every one of his awakened characters who tries to rejoin the sleeping world by denying their consciousness ends in tragedy. But those who accept their exile and find meaning within it, they survive. They may not thrive in conventional ways. They may never be understood or celebrated, but they become something the world desperately needs, even if it doesn't know it. They become lighthouses, signals to other awakened souls that they are not alone, that there are others who see what they see, that consciousness is possible even in a sleeping world. You are one of those lighthouses now, whether you want to be or not, whether you feel ready or not. Your very existence, your refusal to go back to sleep, your commitment to truth, even when it costs you everything. This is a beacon, and there are others out there, scattered across the landscape of the sleeping world, who are looking for that beacon, who are desperate for confirmation that they are not crazy, that what they see is real, that awakening is possible. You may never meet them. You may never know the impact your existence has on theirs, but trust that it does. Trust that your suffering is not meaningless. Trust that your exile is not permanent, because Dostoevsky also showed that the truly awakened eventually find each other, not through seeking, but through recognition. Two conscious souls meeting in the wilderness of sleep recognize each other instantly. There is no need for explanation, no need for proof. The seeing itself is enough. And when that meeting happens, the isolation ends, not completely, but enough. Enough to remind you that you are not alone, enough to give you strength to continue, enough to make the exile bearable. So this is what I offer you now, in the name of Dostoevsky, who understood this path because he walked it himself. Your awakening is not a curse. Your exile is not a punishment. Your suffering is not evidence of failure. You are experiencing the inevitable consequence of consciousness choosing truth over comfort. And that choice, painful as it is the most honorable choice a human being can make. The world will hate you for it, or fear you, or misunderstand you. Let it. You no longer need the world's approval. You no longer need to belong to systems built on sleep. You belong to truth now. And truth is a harsh master, but also a faithful one. It will never abandon you. It will never betray you. It will never ask you to be less than you are. All it asks is that you continue looking, continue seeing, continue speaking what you see, even when no one wants to hear it, not because you will change the world, but because that is what consciousness does. It witnesses, it names, it refuses to pretend, and in that refusal, it creates the possibility for others to awaken. This is your task now, not to wake others, but to remain awake yourself, to hold the light even in darkness, to speak truth even in silence, to love even in exile. This is the path Dostoevsky walked. This is the path he invites you to walk with him. If you recognize yourself in this description, if you feel the weight of awakening and the hatred of a sleeping world, share in the comments what moment first showed you that you could not go back to sleep. Your story may be the lighthouse another soul is searching for. And if you want to continue exploring these depths, these questions that most people never dare to ask, subscribe for more journeys into the territories Dostoevsky mapped with his suffering and his genius. The exile is real. The suffering is real. But so is the possibility of transcendence. And that possibility begins with accepting that you are no longer who you were. You are becoming something new, something the world does not yet have a name for. Trust the process. Trust the pain. Trust that consciousness, once awakened, knows where it is going even when you do not.